I do want to perhaps contrast some of the things I've learned by studying permaculture and practicing it with the tenor of the conference in general. We've talked a lot about economics and money at some very high levels, which I've certainly appreciated hearing and learning about. But I want to remind us that money is not the measure of all things. Permaculture is primarily about removing our subsistence needs from the money economy so that we ourselves, our households, families, and communities become less dependent on a system that we've all acknowledged here is extremely tenuous, vulnerable, full of risk, and probably has poor keeping qualities. So what are those subsistence needs? Well, I think most of us know, but let's recapitulate. They're food and water of good quality and adequate amount. They're the ability to reclaim our own wastes to build soil fertility, which is much neglected by our conventional systems, completely neglected. Heating, and thus a source of fuel. Other forms of energy that we use, electric, gas, ways to cook and prepare food. Nicole did a great introduction. She gave you lots and lots of details, so I'm just going to gloss some of these things. But the ability to make some of our own medicines and apply them intelligently to deal with common conditions and maladies of the human life. The ability to derive some fiber and building materials from the environment around us to create shelter. Those are our basic needs. And that and companionship with other people, something useful to do, the ability to entertain ourselves. That's really all we need. That's all we've needed pretty much in one form or another for the last 100,000 years of Homo sapiens and our immediate ancestors and far back beyond that. Permaculture arose in Australia in the 1970s as a response to the limits to growth and as a conversation between an older man, Bill Mollison, and a younger man, David Holmgren, who co-authored a book, Permaculture 1, that was published in 1978. They've both gone on to write and work in many more ways. David has a book out called Permaculture Principles and Pathways Beyond Sustainability, and I recommend it to you if you want to understand permaculture as a holistic way of thinking. Mollison is the more charismatic of the two, and he traveled the world and made permaculture a household word. That's why it's in the dictionary now. It's why it's not copyright. It's why we can use it with a small p, and I do these days. It's something everybody needs to do. Really, it's a plot to get us back to some sort of subsistence economic basis out of a society that's over-energized, over-articulated, over-specialized, and thus highly vulnerable. The vulnerabilities were visible 35 years ago, and now they're looming over the horizon so that they'll be undeniable in a few more years to anyone. The way permaculture has worked is based on grassroots education and self-education. It's a very low-energy strategy in that regard. We take people, train them intensively for a short time. Generally, it's been 2 to 3 weeks. And now we do it in many different formats, including evenings in community college or weekends over a series of months. But the residential course where people come together and put everything else aside for 2 weeks and study ecosystems and the design science that's embedded in permaculture is the main way that we've propagated these ideas, these memes, and set them around the world. Now they're taught in 100 countries, in 60 languages, on all the inhabited continents. But they have largely stayed out of the realm of institutions. This is a community-based, personal responsibility phenomenon. It's oriented to rebuilding the household economy, which has been hollowed out almost completely in the modern world. We don't make anything at home. All we do is consume. And permaculture aims to flip that around so that at home we'll start producing as well as consuming. And as soon as you do that in the same place, you eliminate a great deal of transportation, which is our large energy vulnerability, as you saw earlier in the conference. So there are a few key strategies that permaculture has adopted, and some of these are well known, but let me list them for you broadly as I understand them. Permaculture, of course, is about this project of moving people back to a basis or forward to a new basis of subsistence. Where we live in a society, as this one, that isn't in touch with its subsistence. I mean, does anybody really know where the water or the food came from this weekend, or how the heat gets here? Well, intellectually, we can trace the lines back, but nobody could reproduce that system if it stopped running. It's in the hands of experts far away. I mean, it's remarkably competent and extraordinarily vulnerable. On the other hand, what Nicole just described, she can do. You're looking at the woman who does it with her husband and her kids. It's in her muscles and in her muscle memory. It's in her home. So that's what I mean by subsistence, the ability to derive food, heat, water, handle your own waste, take care of the land, relate to your neighbors effectively. Yeah. All that under your own control. Where that is already the norm, as it is in 2/3 of the world, permaculture offers directly what it offers to all of us as well, which is that we're going to tap into biology in a more sophisticated way. We're going to look at it at the level of ecosystems to see how elements of the living world interact with the non-living world and transform energy, because it's all about energy. This was Howard Odum's insight 35 years ago. And he was one of the first people to apply energy analysis to the transactions of ordinary life, agriculture, the human economy. What's really going on? Well, we're eating oil. You've all heard that now. It's not shocking any longer. But it was shocking 35 years ago. What? What do you mean? Thought we ate food on the plate. No, all that came there because of oil and gas and coal and some uranium. All right? Permaculture recognizes that those sources of energy are going away. We have to find other sources. Basically, the other alternative is the sun. It's a nuclear reaction at just the right distance. And we want to transform that energy as it comes through the atmosphere, strikes the surface of the earth, into something useful that we can then manipulate. Basically, calories, food, and warmth. And so these are many old arts that have been recollected from traditional peoples and our own cultural history and applied in a context of new scientific understandings, plate tectonics, atmospheric science, passive solar design taken through glass houses and so forth. All of that's relatively new based on science and engineering. And our own continuing empirical work. We're backyard scientists. We're out growing new combinations of vegetables and plants and animals and fungi and observing the results and taking the feedback and incorporating that into the redesign of agroecosystems to meet our household needs and our community needs. So we draw on planetary resources, which is not a new process. It's been going on for thousands of years and at a very rapid rate since the Columbian incursion to the New World. We've been mixing plants and animals all up, which is why we can have Israeli couscous here and eat apples from Kazakhstan and have our beef that came from the Middle East but grew in Michigan or Iowa or someplace. All right, we're mixing all that up, but we haven't done it very thoughtfully up to now. We've done it in a kind of gross way. Permaculture just wants to take it to a new level of sophistication and see what the possible interactions are now that we have this sort of globalized agriculture, horticulture, plant-animal palette. We don't have to do much more, although selectively we can still find plants or animals that haven't been appropriately exploited and put them into our systems. A new perennial spinach from the Caucasus, it's not new to them, it's new to us, Hablitzia. We don't use it, but it's hardy and all the way to Sweden, and it's vigorous, a vine kind of like hops, and it's edible. Okay, well, we don't have it here, but we could get it here. Or, large rodents from South America. For farmed livestock. I'm not saying that this is the best answer for us. I'm just suggesting there are other opportunities we might yet exploit. To give you some idea what I'm talking about when I say planetary resources. So we draw on all that and we find new combinations. David Holmgren has called this ecosynthesis. It's already going on. We have passenger pigeons, we have peregrine falcons hunting from the skyscrapers of San Francisco or New York, or pigeons in the cities, right? So this is a new ecosystem. And is anybody studying it? And how productive could it be? And what about us? Could we be, cultivating avian livestock in cities? Well, people already do, and they raise goats on roofs as well. We're going to model ecosystems, and this is the second large strategy. We're going to model ecosystems that are highly productive in nature. And the shortcut here is nature's most productive ecosystems always employ a lot of water and a lot of trees. Trees are large woody perennials that regulate their environment and form communities of life all around them. And water assists all nutrient transfers, and it is the source of life. And everything that goes on in water is more efficient than what goes on in soil or air. So where we find those places are the estuaries at the mouths of rivers, where they meet the sea, in swamps and wetlands, and the temperate and tropical forests. But our agriculture doesn't look like that. Our agriculture looks like annual weeds, which is, in fact, what it is. There's some weeds we've domesticated and grown around us that came out of our midden heaps and that we have, manipulated. And they're famously productive and famously destructive at the same time because of the way we have to till the soil. They thrive on disturbance. So as we've done more of them, we've created more and more disturbance, which is why we've lost our topsoil, or much of it, continue losing it. And the way out of that, the ways out of that, there are several, involve more perennial agriculture, less soil disturbance. And there are many routes. We can go to regular grazing of animals on grass, which is what they were mostly ruminants meant to eat. We can go to assemblies of trees, shrubs, and herbs that are primarily perennial that yield food. Our forests around us didn't yield that much food, and that's one of the limitations of woody agriculture. We have to adopt and develop plants and put some attention into breeding them and selecting them. That's not yet been done as intensively as with the grains and the vegetables we use. But we can do that. That was done by illiterate people. Most of the plants that make the food and the animals that grace our table as meals were domesticated 3,000 years ago by illiterate farmers. So if they could do it, we could do it. It's primarily based on observation. We just need to continue that process and take some responsibility for it. So we observe that in nature, the most productive ecosystems are estuaries and forests and swamplands. And so we'll do aquaculture, and we'll want to model woody agriculture, and we'll want to borrow savanna movement of animals over grasslands. These are the food and energy intensive production systems that nature offers us as models. A third key strategy in permaculture is gardening as a process. And by that, I mean it in all the metaphors and all the practical and actual aspects. Gardening is an intensive cybernetic process where you put information in and you get information out. That's what cybernetic means. It's an information in and information out process based on feedback loops, observation, learning, readaptation. So we need, as a consequence of that, many more people involved with cultivating food, managing small-scale systems. Guess what? We're going to have a whole lot of surplus labor over the next few years. What are we going to do with that? Those 50 million farmers that were mentioned the other day, attributed to Richard Heinberg, they're the unemployed of the current society. Now, those people are not very well prepared, and they're not in all the right places. But the scale is approximately the same. 1 out of 6 or 1 out of 7 people need to be growing food so the rest of us can eat. That is how we accommodate the loss of net energy and the loss of complexity in our decarbonizing society. It's not so bad, if you listen to Nicole closely in the last hour. it's not a bad life to live with somewhat lowered expectations, closer to nature, with your family and community, taking care of yourself. It's not all drudgery. More of us could do it now. We live, many of us, in suburban areas, as I do, on landscapes that were once agricultural, not so long ago, where the land isn't too bad, the soil isn't too bad, or can be rehabilitated, where markets are close by, social resources are close by, all the water is delivered in pipes underground, and it's like living in an estuary, only it's all below the soil. We can have water everywhere, effectively. So we have great control and the ability to manipulate and therefore take yield from these landscapes. We don't. What do? We push lawnmowers around. You know, nothing. It's a ridiculous dance that we do on the weekends. So we could be gardening our landscapes, even our contemporary suburban and even urban landscapes, using vertical spaces to grow much more food. And we will discover how to do this. The Cubans did it after they lost access to oil. They planted every square inch that wasn't paved in Havana, and now the city raises half its own vegetables. That's a city of 2 million people. There's an outlet for food in every neighborhood. There are 35,000 plots for gardening. One of the strategies that we adopt in permaculture is what we call stacking. Nathan mentioned this word, where we use the vertical. And we also anticipate yields and change in yields over time. We have to do some of Steve Keen's second order derivative thinking about agriculture, where we anticipate the changes in a system, in an ecosystem, that's called succession by ecologists, that happen because of the desire to become more complex, if you will. It's a desire, that's in quotes. Does nature have desires? I think so. At least that's how we understand it as humans. Nature wants to get more complex. The lawn wants to be a forest. Don't fight it. All right? Get behind that process and nudge it, but push it a little in the direction you want it to go so that it's an edible forest. It's a friendly forest. It's one that meets your needs. And you know, save the lawnmower for, you know, some other process. Chopping up, you know, weeds or making papercrete or something. So we stack in space and time. We go vertically and our agriculture becomes more productive because it just has a bigger edge to capture sunlight, and it stores more carbon as wood, which we've got to do. We have got to do. We're running out of the carbon that's been stored from ancient, you know, swamp plants, and we've got to replace it with extensive forests. We've got to do it for at least 2 large reasons. One, we need future energy and all the other ecosystem services, but we need it to put the carbon back in a stable form and out of the atmosphere to prevent things from spiraling out of control. And there's really good evidence that this is possible. A paper published recently by a scientist named Dull, sent to me by my good friend Albert Bates over the weekend, suggests that Dull and his group of scientist colleagues have tracked the correlation between the expansion of the neotropical forests following the Columbian die-off of Native American peoples and the climate anomaly of the Little Ice Age. In other words, Columbus and his cohorts bring diseases to the New World. 20-some million South Americans then die off of smallpox and other diseases in a short time. The hundreds of millions of acres that they were cultivating as garden and farm agriculture return to forest, dense, carbon-rich forest over several centuries. Well, they've returned much quickly, and they stay in that condition till 1800 or later. And lo and behold, 7 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere disappear. And that's just looking at the territories north and south of the Amazon, not at the Andes, not at Central America, and not at the eastern North American hardwood forest either. So a little bit of extrapolation on their numbers suggests that we may wind up attributing most of that little ice age anomaly, which was a ½ degree centigrade drop in global temperatures, to the reforestation of the Americas, which unfortunately grew out of the massive genocide, and intentional and otherwise, of native peoples. The good news there is trees could make a difference. We need to plant them. So everyone here needs to become a tree cultivator, observer, farmer, planter. I've planted my 100 or so in the last year or two, and I need to keep doing it. So do all of us. We have, out of all this, and this is another key strategy, and it's, you know, I hate saying it in this context, you know, the window's closing, but we have a historical opportunity. We still have access. We all came here on fossil fuels and we're running the conference on them. We still have access to cheap fossil fuels, relatively speaking, considering the energy that's embedded in them and what work we can accomplish with them, to make small interventions strategically, to micro-engineer our landscapes to hold water, building ponds, terraces, earthworks, etc., to construct passive solar buildings or retrofit existing buildings with glass and with, you know, architectural modifications, to leave a real legacy of renewable energy and sustainable ecosystems for our descendants. And we should do that. We should do that. That's the best possible use of the energy that remains, is to organize repair of landscapes and construction of renewable energy infrastructure. And I don't necessarily mean solar panels. Some of that, not too much. Maybe more glass houses or greenhouses and solar retrofits on our dwellings and other buildings, farm ponds, and so forth. All that goes on in the context of nurturing the household economy and grassroots education for extension, so that these ideas are basically unstoppable. Permaculture isn't so much a social movement as a virus that's been let loose in the population and more or less can't be contained anymore. And the ideas are out there. People who haven't taken permaculture courses are teaching permaculture, and I don't even think that's a bad idea anymore. My colleagues who are professionals, so to speak, who make some money at this process, have argued for decades about who should and who shouldn't teach permaculture. I think everybody who knows something about it should teach someone who knows a little less about it. Just like the third graders should teach the second graders, okay? And those of us, therefore, who perhaps understand the system and can help keep it on track, will be able to keep putting that pulse out, and people will just take those ideas and move them where they're needed by this way. Mollison set up a very anarchic system, you know, pseudo-institutions, so we could stand up to Congress or the university or whomever and look credentialed long enough to get our ideas across. But really, it was always a sham. That whole institutional bit was just a mask. The whole thing is really about what do we do? And it can happen across, it most often happens across the dinner table or out in the garden that we figure that out. So let's continue doing that part, because that's what matters. So I just want to close by taking a few minutes and say briefly what we have done. And I say we, I mean myself and my partner, Keith Johnson, who's sitting here in the middle of the room. We moved to Bloomington, Indiana from the Southern Appalachians 5 years ago, bought a small property on the edge of the city, just outside city limits, but within 2 miles of a major commercial center, so that we're well located. Someone early on, I think, in the conference said, if you have the right place, that's great. Well, we found the right place, or it found us, called us in. So we can walk to town, ride a bike to town. We're not constrained by silly regulations. The city allows you to have 5 chickens if you get up a petition with your neighbors, that kind of thing. We're in farm country. There's a farm 200 yards down the road from us, has a small herd of cattle. We know the farmer. He's a good guy. He's a part-time farmer. But the land is there. It used to be an apple orchard. There's apples in our neighborhood. There's trophy houses, too. It's kind of silly. It's a mix. But that's the suburbs. There's opportunity. There's some wealth. There's big houses. I can think, oh, let's see, dormitory, hotel, workshop venue, You know, I have neighbors who, single woman with a dog living in 4,000 or 5,000 square feet on 2 levels. Like, oh, well, I could do something with that. So we have to reimagine our landscapes and our resources. We went to the suburbs. We assessed where we should live. We went to the Midwest as Midwesterners. We came back there, not too far from family, in the middle of a region that has more than enough farmland to feed itself, has some, you know, remaining forests, is centrally located, has rivers, all those kinds of things. So sort of deep strategic thinking. Where do you want to be? Well, a port wouldn't be a bad place either, but then there's rising sea levels to deal with. So not too far south, going to get too hot. Not too, you know, deep into the Bible Belt. Lived there, you know, not so great. Place you could move, have some flexibility. So we chose a place, or it chose us, and then we found 2 dilapidated buildings on a 2/3 acre lot. The lot was flat. We were ecstatic. We just about rolled around in it because we'd been walking up and down mountains for 10 years. And you find out, whoa, flatland's amazingly productive. It's amazing how easy it is to be on flat ground. Now, there are disadvantages. When you want to move water around, flat is harder. But I'll take the trade-offs, thank you. So we dove into 2 buildings that had been lived in by 3 families since they were originally built in the 50s, cobbled together out of virgin old-growth timber from Oregon and scraps of siding out of local building stock, and had been run down, rented 7 years, the neighborhood party house, cars parked in the front lot. We arrived and started gardening immediately, and the neighbors yelled over the fence, "Gardening, woo!" You know, it's like we knew we were in the right place. You know? So we had to do energy retrofits, pretty much what Nicole went over. Insulation, there wasn't much, if any. New windows. Solar gain, I mean, the south ends of the houses were blank. No light coming in. Houses were turned the wrong way. Sun's down there, houses are long this way. Not good, but still, there were opportunities. So we added windows in the right place. We put thermal mass into the house so that when it does warm up, sun hits that concrete slab in the living room and the tile warms up, and it's very well insulated. Now we've got a big hot rock that we're sitting on, and the whole house basically stays warm all night from that. Stays cool in the summer. Put heat pipe in it, connected it to the wood stove, got a new high-efficiency furnace, but don't ever use it. Leave it turned off. We went to wood heating because we're surrounded by woods. We have since put up PV panels. Ours are grid intertied. We have future ideas about an independent system. I don't feel as vulnerable, perhaps, as Nicole feels living in Ottawa. Our climate is not so severe. We're not so dependent on electricity. We don't cook with it. You know, we get our livelihood by using computers. That's important, but they don't take a lot. We could find ways to work around. I expect the grid to be operational for quite some number of years yet. Those PV panels, amounting to 2.4 kilowatts, provide all of our annual needs. And because we buy and sell with the local utility, we don't have a net bill. We just pay a little minor connection fee. We're actually looking at what can we do with extra electric power. Maybe electric bikes. That's what I'm thinking right now. That's about the right range for us. I go to the post office a lot. It's 2.5 miles away. If I had an electric bike, I would do that. You know, the weather's pretty good much of the time. We got into water catchment. We already knew something about how to do it. We went ahead and built ourselves a cistern above ground, 10,000 gallons. Turns out that in our part of the world, which is on karst topography, that's underground, it's all limestone, and it's caves, and wells are unreliable. You can dig a well, it'll be there, and next month it might disappear, it might dissolve and run away. So people always used cisterns in our part of the world. They did in Tennessee, they did in Missouri. I mean, that part of the world's pretty much all shot full of, looks like Swiss cheese underground. So we built a cistern. Turns out our neighbors have one in the basement from 1890. So not so strange. But ours is above ground. It's a beautiful cylindrical domed cistern, and we're going to build another one. That one holds 10,000 gallons, and we connected it by underground pipes to hydrants all around our lot so that we can take a hose to the garden anywhere we want. It all flows by gravity. It flows into a series of standpipes right up underneath the gutters, standing columns of water that go underground and come up inside the tank and spill in the tank. Water falls off the roofs, and they're now new roofs because we bought old roofs. Yay, we get to get rid of the old roofs and put in new roofs, enameled metal, clean, easily maintained, 40-year life. That water goes into the tank by gravity, flows out of the tank when we want it to, goes into the house, connected to the washing machine and the toilet. So we have a very nice water system. Wasn't enough this year. We're still in 3 months of drought. I don't think this weekend's rain will have changed that. But we know the scope of the problem, and we're at least halfway there to meeting the need. We're putting in ponds. We've got started with a 1,000-gallon pond. We've added 2,000, 3,000 more. We're going to build another 4,000-gallon cistern. We put up a big greenhouse for food production in the winter, and we've learned to tweak it so that we get better performance with each year. We're next looking at attaching it to a small sauna building where we can take dry heat baths and put the extra heat overnight into the greenhouse to keep the plants flourishing. We had a pretty good crop last year throughout the winter of salad greens and green vegetables, leafy green vegetables, which are really welcome in the winter. You can have dry stored food, and that's great, but fresh green vegetables are amazing. We haven't added the animal component yet because we haven't wanted or had the labor force on the property continuously to take care of them. But we're close because we're working with 3 interns really, one who lives on the property, one who lives in town, one who lives just a little out of town, who come and work with us because they want to know what we're doing and observe it and learn from them. So we're developing, and they're mostly younger. One of them is our own age, a woman, and 2 are younger men. And so we have a pretty good labor force. My own daughter and her partner are several states away and not right now available, but I am anticipating the day when they might also need to come and live with us. So we're planning an expansion that includes a barn and an apartment and another cistern and a composting toilet and the sauna and some other things. I expect we'll be able to build most of that next year, mostly from local materials and our own skills on land we already have. We do waste capture. We use all of our gray water. We either put it directly in the landscape from the showers and the laundry, or we take the dishwater and use it to flush the toilet. We take the output from the septic tank and use it to irrigate tree crops. We pump it out. We're now developing a cell to do further treatment so we get more plant growth yield out of it before it goes to the trees. Nothing leaves. Nothing organic leaves the property. All the paper is mulched or burnt. All of the wood is burnt or mulched. Only plastic films mostly and a little bit of construction waste are taken to landfill. So we don't go to the dump and we don't put trash out every week like our neighbors. They have red cans and we have nothing. We are producing maybe 15% of our own food. I consider that a pretty good accomplishment for starting with, undeveloped soils and doing it part-time. That will grow. We don't expect ever to be able to feed ourselves wholly, although we probably have enough land to produce all the food for 2 people on our lot. We don't expect to. We expect to enter into relationships with other growers. And we have. More gardening is going on in our neighborhood than the day we moved in. Tree crops, bees. Oh, we have bees too. And cattle that weren't there when we moved in. So there's the emergence of even a very micro-local food system in a context of a community that is interested and supportive of local food. And the rest of it, well, we forage. We found apple trees a few weeks ago, and we went and harvested 10 bushels of apples. And we could only do that because we'd built a root cellar right next to the water cistern, so the water mass keeps the root cellar warm in winter and cool in summer. And that 10 bushels of apple is in there right now. Some of it's in jars as applesauce, some of it's been eaten as pie, and some of it is sitting around waiting until later in the winter when we won't have any other fresh fruit. We've gathered tools, we're repairing tools, we're carefully selecting the tools that we don't have and acquiring them while we still have the opportunity. We're making alliances in the community. That's the Peak Oil Task Force, that's Teaching for the University, that's a local guild of permaculture students who want to learn more, whom we continue to mentor a little bit and nudge along to build up their own systems. Our neighbors who have gained and acquired gardening skills and chickens since we moved in. And an expansion, which is about publishing the magazine and putting the word out and speaking and teaching and so forth. And local trade. Keith has gone to the market with some of our vegetables and plants, and we expect to do much more of that. That's an optimistic, upbeat picture for a story that's really a response to very challenging conditions. We enjoy the way we live, and we would really like to stay home most all the time, because it's the most interesting place for miles and miles and miles around us. We've got it all fenced to keep the deer out, so we get the yields. And when I go outside the fence, I think I'd really rather go back in. We have hundreds of species going on, and they're all in different stages of development. There's much to learn from. There's yields, there's food to graze on in the garden. There's people coming by wanting to see it, to talk to. I mean, if you're doing the right stuff, you don't need to go too much farther afield. Services are there, the town is nearby, it's an interesting town, we can go and hear opera very cheaply. Music is available, it's wonderful. I mean, it's a university community, and so far that's offered us tremendous wealth. But we're really kind of content to be at home and just to do our bit there. So I hope that's of use to some of you as well. And thank you very much for listening.